Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. We are starting class 2 of the Self Project, and tonight we're going to be discussing the Torah's intimate relationship with the Jewish people, where we crowdsource the truth. That's what the objective of this group is going to be. So we're going to be discussing in this evening's group our transition from Pesach to Shavuos, from freedom to the ethereal, from matzah to Torah. A talk that will forever change your understanding of these two pivotal holidays of Pesach and Shavuos. Stay tuned for life-altering conceptualizations. Okay, so let's recap what we spoke about last time. So last time we spoke about the immortal words of the Ramchal. Actually, just get this slide over here. Let's see if this is the right one. Share. And the Ramchal was discussing the critical question of why am I here? Why are we here? And we medayik with the words of the Ramchal that he said that a person has to know machayvasai ba'olamai. As you quoted from Mark Twain, Lahavdil, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And the way Ramchal says it is that a person has to verify, he has to clarify machayvasai ba'olamai. What's his obligation in his world? And we medayik that what the Ramchal is alluding to is if a person has to know olam his, it's in the singular, the vav over there is telling a person to know what's going on in his world. So when you the answer is of the objective of life is why am I here? You have to first discover the I, and then you could discover the here. As Rabbi says in Alei Shur, Chelik Aleph, he says, Baruhu. He says, should make sure I have the right. Oh, here it is. So this is a quote that's somewhat related. If I cannot do great things, let me do small things in a great way. Where Rabbi says, he says, Baruch, he says, it's clear, all the great ones of the generations, they all worked on their singular avodah, meaning although these were people that are people of the klal, they're dealing with klal Yisrael in the whole world, but most definitely a big part of their work was working on themselves. Now the question we had addressed last time is that isn't life all about connecting? And we said yes. The first one, however, is the relationship with ourselves. So let's develop that idea as it relates to our current metaphysical state. We are right now between Pesach and Shavuos. And as a people, this is our annual transformation, where we go from one state to another state. And let's peek into your ancestral heritage and your inheritance. And let's see how that relates to the ideas that we're discussing. See, when we spoke about in the last segment, we spoke about, like we're saying from the Mesilas Yesharim, that we said that we're creating this project of the self, by the self, for the self. And we asked the critical question about why are we here? And that's, like we said, it's a question that we need to ask ourselves all the time. What are we here for? If it's for physical pleasure, it's too much work, pain and suffering, and it's insufficient return. It just doesn't give us what we really want, doesn't really last. So what about relationships, social change, meaningful living? Those are all good things, but they're still not sufficient. We said whoever's on this group, like we said, are most definitely thinking individuals, because ultimately, like we said, what's the point of it all? We all know how challenging life could be in regards to everything that we do. And if we're going to depend on things like that, we're going to come to looking like how people look in COVID and Corona, which is like this woman. That is like, again, this is what it's for. What am I living for? It seems to be so challenging, so overwhelming. And what's it all about? So Yiddishkeit, thankfully, offers what's called transcendental options, things that are bigger than just this world. Because for this world, it's like, okay, there's so much more work and effort. Like Kahela says, Havel Avalim, it's like, okay, you can get some pleasure, but it's just the ratio just doesn't work out. So in Yiddishkeit, we have ideas called Tikkun Olam. You're making a dir b'dachtonim, creating a domain for God in this world, or Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name. The problem is, but how do we do this? It's overwhelming when you think about like what we have to do. And many people think, is that, who am I already? Many people walk around like this girl, feeling like that I'm so dependent on my environment, on my relationships, on my emotions. I can't do it. I'm not worthy. I must be perfect. Nobody loves me. I'm not good enough. I must not make a mistake. So I'm like, what does that mean that I'm supposed to make tikkun olam? I can't. I'm just one small little person. How could I be doing that? So there's a classic parable that many quote in regards to showing how you're significant. And they say there's a few different versions of this story, but a great conductor was once listening to a great symphony, and he said there's something off. And they said, what was off? He says there was one cello player that wasn't there. And they said, what? How can you notice that? There was hundreds of musicians. It was a crazy amount for the symphony. He says, I know. And they found out that he was right. So they like using that as a metaphor for people to say, like, okay, if there's someone that's not there, you could be one small little part, but you're still necessary for the world to go on. And if you like that metaphor, then kol hakavod, and you don't need the next idea I'm about to say. But what I'm about to say is that for many people, it just doesn't resonate. I'm not saying it's not true. Obviously, we're all pieces of the puzzle, but many people feel like I'm half dead and everything is still continuing. Are you really telling me that I'm so integral, I'm so necessary? So we'll get another cello player. Some people say, I don't feel like I have even an instrument. And moreover, people say, is that my life only worthy as a supporting percussionist? In other words, I feel like I'm bigger than just some add-on piece. How does that relate? How does it connect? How could we understand how this works out? So we're going to mention a very mind-blowing ideas in this shir. So one of the big ideas that just is going to be critical in many areas of our lives, and it's going to be one of the foundations of this project, is that our personal mission statement is that all of our work only is of the self. The only thing a person can be or change is the self. And that's all you can do, and that's all we're supposed to be doing. Mesil Shisham, in the first parak, he describes the person living his life. And he says, if a person's going to be a soldier, and he's going to win the war from all sides, he says, you know what the objective of this all is? It's hu yeh ha'adam ha'shalim. The objective is to be the complete person. Asher yizke ledavik b'bari. What's interesting is that people think, what's the purpose of this world? People think it's to get olam haba, it's to make, like we said, dir b'tachtonim, kiddush Hashem. Those are the greater, the macro. But for the person's objective is that he should be the complete, or she should be the complete person that Hashem knows they are. Now that is the type of a person, Asher yizke ledavik b'bari, who will merit to cleave to the Creator. The yatzim na praise the hazeh, and they'll leave this corridor. The ikones betrakim, they're going to go into the palace, leir ba'arachayim, to get the delight of the life of the world to come. But your whole job is only about yourself. It's not about all these things. And that idea is liberating. Because when you think you have to be everything, that's depressing. And when the person sees, like, so what am I supposed to do? You're just supposed to be you. You're not just a supporting percussionist. Yes, maybe in the larger symphony, that's how it all plays out. But your job is to just play your role in life. Just be you. Find your instrument. But that's all your objective is. And this idea about liberation, and this where I'm going to try to say a bunch of ideas, so in case anyone has to stop me, but I really want to talk about these two Yom Tovim of Pesach and Shavuos and show how they're the underpinnings of a lot of this work. What's the symbol of freedom of Pesach? Zman Chayriseinu. It's called Chag HaMatzos. The matzah is the symbolism of the Yom Tov of Pesach. Now, what is the matzah called? It's called the Lechem Oini, the poor man's bread. So isn't that interesting that poverty, which is the poor man's bread, wouldn't you say that's the opposite of the opulence of emancipation? Isn't Pesach supposed to be we're on top of the world, we're the free men, we walk with our heads up high, and even at the Seder we have all our silver out there? Why would matzah be the symbolism of freedom? That's for the poor. We're on top of everything, we're on top of the world. So Maral says something so incredible that you have to read the words inside. And we're again, this, don't think if anyone's joining, like we said, we don't care if it's 5 or 500 people, but it's not, don't think it's gonna be one type of class. We're doing, it's a lot of text now, and it's more about the Sfarim and about the Inyanim of religion, because that's just the underpinning. But as we're gonna go along, it's gonna be from a whole scope of different ideas, but this just lays the foundation. Maral says like this, he says, Haniyas ba'atzmai, poverty itself, harura ala geula. That is the direction regarding redemption. Why? Like we're asking the question, wouldn't that be the opposite? So he says, she'ein in ha'geula rak, says, you know what redemption is? She'yoytze, a person leaves, ve'ein lo shum tzeruf el zulasei, and he has no connection to anybody else. The poor man has nothing, only himself, and that is geula. He says, look at my evidence. He says, not like the slave. The epitome of a slave, you know what the epitome of a slave is? He doesn't stand by himself. He's connected to someone else. That's his master. And therefore, freedom is the exact opposite. So he says, therefore, somebody that has enrichment doesn't stand by itself. A wealthy person, he's connected to his acquisitions. That's not the true redemption. But somebody has poverty, and it has no acquisition. That is redemption. Redemption is totally independent, not connected to anything else. That's the true liberation. You're dependent only on the self, only being yourself. And he says, that's the same idea with the matzah. If there's only the dough, that's all there is. What is the essence of the dough? It's just flour and water. That's the essence of the dough. That's what makes it the poor man's bread. That is only what it is. And he goes on to say, I don't have it on the slide, ki matzah shira, because the enriched matzah, sheyesh b'mashka, we don't eat, when we have matzah, we don't eat the enriched matzah that has some other liquids, because it says, that's its enrichment. The word enrichment has in it the word riches, and therefore you don't use it. Now, if it has yeast or leavening, we're not going to go into this idea right now, but it's important to understand. He says, it's even more precluded from being matzah, because in the dough itself, there's chametz, which means to say that it's not being itself, it's being something else. And the critical fundamental principle of freedom is to be just yourself, not to be dependent on any one person, on any one category, like it says on the Liberty Bell's inscription, which was actually from the previous parsha from Bahar, the week before, that says, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof, from Leviticus 25:10, which it says in the type of a cross and draw, which Rashi explains is Shadar b'chol makom shu reitzeh. What is freedom? You live where you want to live. That's what America stands on. It stands on this concept of being the ultimate self. And this is really epitomized, is conceptualized in the Gemara and Brachas, David Zayin and Aleph, which there's something within us, a longing, a yearning. So the Gemara tells us, Rabbi Master of the world, it's revealed and known in front of you. Our will is to do your will. And who's holding us back? If we want to connect with you, Rabbi Shalom, who's holding us back? So the Gemara says two things, which the way we're explaining is really one thing. It's Sa'ar Shab'isa, which metaphorically is called the yeast in the dough, the Shibba Malchias, and the subjugation of the kings. What they both mean is the same thing. What does it mean? It means to say that you have sometimes things inside of yourself, and you sometimes have things outside of yourself, but both of them are not letting you be you. Which is the yeast in the dough is something inside you that's trying to make you bigger. Don't try to be bigger than who you are. Just be yourself. Be Malki, be Suri, be Shlomie, be Yankel. Just be yourself. It's the yeast in the dough that tries to make it bigger. And matzah is just the flour in the water. Don't give me anything else. And Shibba Malchis is something on the external, on the national level that doesn't let us be ourselves, which is the subjugation of the nations. But it's all the same thing. It's just allowing ourselves to be ourselves. With that idea, there's a very critical idea. If I were to ask, and again, I'm not following on the chat, so you can jump in and let me know if anyone is jumping in with any ideas or any questions. But if I would say, what is the greatest attribute that a person could acquire? I mean, there's self-help books out the wazoos, in the Svarim HaKadoshim, there's so many different midas. What would you say is the primary midah from all the midas taivas? So we don't have to guess. The Ramban, in his famous letter called the Igeres Ramban, he tells us what is the greatest of all the midas taivas. And he says like this. He says, this is basically as he starts off the letter, he says, when you say from anger, tala libcha midas hanava, should enter on your heart the attribute of humility, as it's commonly translated. Shehia midas taivim mikol midas taivas, because the greatest attribute of all the good attributes. So the greatest of them all is hanava. Now, one of the missions of mine is to redefine for people what the midah of anava is. It's the most misunderstood and misrepresented and understated midah that there is out there, which we'll probably get at a later point in time. But what is anava? So again, it's usually translated as humility, but what is the shirish of the word anava? The shirish is the word ani. As we're explaining, why do we eat on Pesach the lechem aini? What is unique about the poor man's bread? Why is that the symbolism of freedom? Because the ani, Ein Shum Tzeir El Zulasei, is not connected to anyone or anything else. He's not dependent or codependent on anyone. He's just being, or she's being herself. Geula, what we had in the Yom Tov Pesach, and this is what's so critical, which I don't think most people understand, what the freedom we had on the Seder night, on Pesach, which is the beginning of becoming a Jew, which we're going to then transition right now to go into showing how we're going now to Gabal Satar in a few days. The first step is, and that's why it says Moshe Kibbutz Torah Mahar Sinai, which just like Sinai was, so to speak, the Anav. Moshe Rabbeinu was the Anav. The prerequisite for Kabbalah Satar is being an Anav, because the Anav is just being who they are. It's the midah of emes, like the way Maral says. If I had to translate the word Anava, I would call it not humility, but authenticity. Being just yourself. That is freedom. I don't have to be anything that you want me to be or that I think you want me to be. I'm just going to be me. That is the true freedom. That is why we call it the Lechem Aini. That's the midah of another, which is the greatest of all means, because if you're being you, you have everything you could be. You're never going to have more than what you could be or allowed to be. You're looking at someone else because they have simcha, because they have chesed, because they have MS or whatever it is. That's them. You will get the greatest. And Maral in the Sivan Nava, he talks about this at great length, that the Hashem's midah, intrinsic, which again, we'll probably get to these ideas at some future point, is the midah of anava. And if you want to be the most godly-like, it's when you're being your piece of the puzzle, which is just being you, which is just playing your role. And that's your personal mission statement, like the Ramchal says, Ha'adam Hashalom is with the midah of anava. So that's the first half of what we're speaking about. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in just to clarify, because I just said a lot of ideas, and that really was a class in its own right. But I as Shavuos is coming up, and my Daf Yomi Shiur also, like I was trying to catch them up because the Daf Yomi Shiur are coming up before Shavuos. So I'm doing a little bit like Zoom. I'm doing a little Zoom on Zoom over here. So now let me go a little bit further. I spoke yesterday in our new shul, so to speak, on our block. There's everyone's doing the tent. We had a tent because we can't be in the shul. So I gave a shir. We called it. I gave a Pirkei Avos shul, Pirkei Avos shir. Now, when I was still young, and I traveled all over North America for Term Masorah's Project Seed and for based in Medjugorje and Lakewood. So in one community, I believe it was Norfolk, Virginia. So I was asked to speak on Shabbos afternoon in what was aptly dubbed Perek in the Park. So that stuck. I don't really like that title. Now, this Perek in the Park that we gave yesterday, so it was interesting. I mentioned a story, a prologue that I never knew about before. See, when I used to travel around, so when you're giving classes, you have to be more of like a motivational speaker. Now I retired, I'm more of a thinker, so I don't have to give so much entertainment anymore. But when you're speaking, you have to have like one of the secrets is you have to have a real case of stories. So there's one story that I really said many, many times. And on Shabbos, I found the source of that story, which I had never known before. It was in Rabbi Youngreis's book called The Committed Life. It was in chapter 2, How You Bring God into Your Life. The story goes that her son was making a simcha in Far Rockaway, and Rabbi Bender, who was a friend of the family, came over. So she said she was writing this chapter about how to bring God into your life. And she asked Rabbi Bender, she says he wants a story with little boys, who Rabbi Bender is the master mechanech of boys, and she wanted the story specifically with them playing sports. So he asked her, okay, but why specifically sports? She says, because I want to show that what the Torah does to the Jewish people, even little kids who are playing ball when it really means something. And moreover, it's regarding other people to show what the Torah does to a person. So Rabbi Bender told the following story to Rabbi Youngreis, a story that I've said over many, many times. And I finally found the source, and it very much relates to the idea of what we're going to talk about regarding Torah. The story is that there was a fifth grade boy that was mentally challenged that would come once a week to Yeshiva Darchi Torah, and would come just to be exposed to a regular classroom, to some Judaic studies. And his name was Shai. And one time, Rabbi Bender came out by recess break, and they were playing baseball. Now, if anyone knows anything regarding baseball, in the secular world, there's the daddies that are coaches. There's a lot of heated discussions, and debates regarding the baseball game. The boys were playing. It was the bottom of the ninth. Bases loaded, and guess who's up? Shai, the mentally challenged boy. So the pitcher pitches one over the plate, and Shai swings and he strikes. Strike one. Again, the pitcher pitches, tries to come a little bit closer. Shai swings again, strike two. So then the pitcher comes really, really close. And two of Shai's teammates come up behind him, and they put their hands with his hands, and they hold his hand, and they swing with him, and the pitcher lobs it over, and he hits it, and it goes towards third base. And it's rolling to this third baseman, and he lets it roll past him. And everyone's screaming, "Run, Shai, run!" And Shai runs to the first, and he doesn't even know he runs past first. And then they quickly know, they pull him back, they help him tag first, and they push him towards second base. And then from second base to third base, and as he's rounding third, heading home, both teams are screaming, "Run, Shai, run!" And Shai comes home, and then they all pick him up. Both teams pick him up on their shoulders, and they say, "Shai, you won the game. Shai, you won the game." It's a very inspirational story. And that really hits home, no pun intended, regarding what Torah could do to a person. How it can make young boys, who are generally so heated about winning the game, to go ahead and give up the win, to make a young boy feel good about himself and so proud of himself. And what I want to discuss now regarding the upcoming Yom Tov of Shavuos is that how does that happen? Being told something doesn't necessarily create the nature. How is it that the Torah goes and creates a change, such a change in people and young boys, that they can become such type of a people? So let's back up for a second. See, there's something very interesting about something called the Self Project, is that on some level, it sounds counterintuitive to the Jewish soul and to the Jewish culture. Take the Aseret Hadibros. That's what we learn on Shavuos. It's the Decalogue. It's the ultimate, depiction of what the Torah is. Now, if you look at the Luchos, half of it is about Hashem, and half of it about others. It's nothing about the self. is a famous Hakdama from Chaim Volozhiner in his famous class of Nefesh Chaim, that his son says that what his father always told me is supposed to be Lizulasai. You're always supposed to be for others, not about the self. And don't all the sources say that Hashem says, I created the world for my honor, that the world is L'Kadosh Shemai, L'Yachid Shemai, it's all for Hashem. So it's either for others or for Hashem. What is this focus that we're talking about here regarding the self? So there's a famous Mishnah that many of you have learned over the past weeks. In the first parak in Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah says, Al Shleisha Devarim Ha'olam Omed. Shimon Tzaddik was from the remnants of the Great Assembly, and he says the world stands on three things: on the learning of Torah, on the act of service, and of acts of kindness. So what are these three things? Why does the world stand on these three things? So Maral, in his Pirush Derech Chaim, he quotes a Gemara Kedushin of Memam and Aleph that talks about a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Imru letzadiki type." Tell it to the righteous who's good. So the Gemara says, "Tell it to the righteous who's good." Is there a tzaddik that's not good? So the Gemara Kedushin explains, yes. Taiv lashemayim ve'ina taiv labriyas. If someone's good with heaven, has a good relationship with Hashem, but it does not have a good relationship with others, zehu tzaddik she'ina type. That's a righteous person who's not good. Meaning, what that tells us is, as Maral elsewhere says, that when it says an order of something, the beginning is a stipulation for the end, which means to say that if you want to have the last thing mentioned of Gemilas Chasadim, you cannot have acts of kindness if you don't first have avodah. You have to have first your submission to Hashem, as the Chazon Ish says beautifully in his Sefer Emunah B'Tachon. He discusses the grave errors that happen when a person does kindness that's not really submitted to Torah. You can't just do kindness. You don't know what kindness is. You have to know the framework that Hashem has first. You have to submit your will to Hashem. But says Maral, says, he says, and most definitely, but a person has to be complete in himself. If a person not complete in himself, then he's not a righteous person at all. What that means to tell us is that, as the Maral says later on, he says, a person was created for himself. He has to first be himself. The person is disgraced and he's not considered significant himself. So he's a creation of emptiness, and there's no substance to him. So Maral tells us, he says, and I think women will be able to appreciate this more than men, the world stands on connection, as we mentioned in the first class. It's all about yichud, connections, relationships. There's three different types of relationships in the world. There's Gemilas Chasadim, which is relationships with other people. There's Avodah, which is a relationship with God. And then there's Torah. Torah is the relationship with a person's self. Torah is the first in the order before Avodah Gemilas Chasadim. Now, the truth is that why is Torah the greatest thing? We're coming to Kabbalah Torah, to the Yom Tov Shavuos. Really, every culture has their celebrities. Some places the politicians, some places the performers. In the Jewish people, who are the Jewish people's greatest people? They're, so to speak, they're celebrities. It's the Gedalim. What do the Gedalim do all day? They learn Torah. Why? Why are they learning Torah all day? And why is it the first in the order of Avodah Gemilas Chasadim? So I'm going to ask a question now, and please, everyone feel free to jump in, because this is a question that this will rock your world. You will never forget this for the rest of your life, and according to the natural order of things. What is the etymology? What is the shirish? What's the root of the word Torah? Where does that come from? I mean, everything was built on Torah. The world was created for Torah. The world stands on Torah. All the Jewish people do is learn Torah. Why? What is Torah? How do we translate that? So I'm probably not going to get the feedback, the instant feedback, unless people have, I don't know, if they could do the raise the hand thing. But generally, Torah is translated as Hayra. That's one of the classic definitions of Torah, which is that of a teaching. It tells you what to do. Rav Shimshon Paul Hirsch says something so incredible. And I think especially women would enjoy that. I'll answer what he says with a mashal, with a story that he was that inherited a 2-story apartment from,
Right,
you
Shlomie, we meant
couldn't really
something.
call it an apartment. Really, we're able to. What?
It's breaking up. I don't know if it's me or you, but if
Oh,
you
you
could
don't hear me?
if you could repeat the last sentence and a half.
Okay, so basically, we're going to explain how Rav Hirsch translates the shirish, the etymology of the word Torah, with a mashal, with a story. That there was a woman called Devorah that inherited from our father, like an apartment, but we said it was more like a churva, more like a dilapidated building, from her father. And she moved in with her family on the first floor, and they barely eked out a living. It was really like some old building, but it was enough to manage. And some people says, and what's on the upper story? It's like, oh, she's like, forget about it. I'm not even checking that. Once tried, and the door was jammed, and whatever, and who knows? I have enough stars from the first floor. I'm not checking up. We don't need it anyway. I'm not busy. I don't want to be busy cleaning up another churba. Some people said, no, you never know. Check. Who knows? You might have extra space, and maybe he left something there. So finally, one day after many months, she agrees, and she gets a few friends, and they're trying to open the door. They can't even get open the door. Finally, they're prying, they're pushing, and finally they push, and they open the door, and guess what? It's a beautiful suite. It's state-of-the-art, brand new bedding, cushions, couches, curtains, furniture. The everything is new, and not only that, there's deeds and documents that the father left over, leaving her a sizable fortune. And with all that money, she obviously did over the first floor and made it into like an entryway. And they were able to have, something to live on for many, many years. What's the mashal? A person is made up of two parts, an upper story and a lower story. And we tend to live in the basement. We live in the body. And we say that why is there so many challenges and so difficult? Because we're living in the basement. In the basement, it's not so good. In the first floor, it's pretty harsh. Go upstairs to the attic. There's a lot of beauty and riches that you have over there, which obviously the metaphor in the person is the person's brain. The person's upper part is a person's neshama. We say when we put on the tefillin, the men say, "Haneshama shebamaychi," the soul that's in my brain. In the upper story, there's not just the challenges that we have down over here. There's something a little bit greater than that, much greater. The ethereal is what we experience when we go to the upper story. And then that's when we can bring that down to the first floor and make that complete. So drum roll now. For a pshat that when I first came across this, I literally fell out of my chair. That I couldn't believe. I never knew this idea about what Torah is. Some women have their husbands learning Torah, their sons learning Torah, their fathers learning Torah, their brothers learning Torah. But everyone knows that this is a big part of our culture is about Torah. What is it? What makes it so great? And we know everything comes from the shame, from the name. What is the shirish? So first says, it comes from the word like vatahar. Vatahar vatelet. What does vatahar mean? It means pregnancy. Now, this is where it really gets good. For the girls in my high school class, I offered them $1 if someone could tell me why would Torah be called pregnancy? How could Torah be related to the word pregnancy? So, I mean, that's mind-blowing because if anything, there's one thing that women always say that men don't get is pregnancy. And this is what Torah is. Torah is from the word of pregnancy. Why would Torah be called pregnancy? So the answer is that an inspired brain plants a seed in the body, conceiving a nefesh chaya, conceiving a living spirit. Why Torah is called pregnancy is because it actually does exactly the idea of pregnancy. There's a seed. A person goes and takes something and brings it down into their body, creating a living spirit in the person. That is what Torah is. That's exactly what pregnancy is. Someone actually in yesterday's shir in the Perek in the Park, he got the second half. He said that, yeah, it's like Torah, like pregnancy, it develops over time. That's the second half. And that's what happens with a person when they're inspired by the Torah. But first is that you saturate your brain with divine wisdom. Then your brain, which is the core of everything that you do, will change who you are. This is an idea that's incredible. We could talk about this for hours and hours, which we're not going to because I like saying a lot. But this is really, Rav Hirsch also compares this to a pasuk in Yecheskel, Parag Gimel, pasuk Aleph. He says, the pasuk says, Echel es ha-megillah hazais. Eat this scroll. What does that mean? Rav Hirsch says in Parshas Boy. He says, absorb its contents completely. Let its contents become part of your very self. That's why Torah is called bread. Torah, one of the things is Kehim Chayenu, because it creates what you are. That's what Torah is. It's also the same thing that we have, we said today in the Tfilas Hashla, the tefillah that you say on Erev Rosh Chodesh Sivan. So the tefillah the Shla is, he says, Uvarasa elamcha, you created your world. Begin lehishtemode elakusa, that your godliness be known, be'emtzaz teirascha, in the medium of your Torah HaKadosha, K'meish Amar Rabbeinu Zal Bereshis, like the Chazal say regarding Bereshis, is Bishvil Torah, Bishvil Yisrael. What that comes to tell us is just like the spiritual pregnancy and also the real one, that of the real children. The objective of it is to create a living spirit inside the person. It changes who you are. It's the same reason why I'm currently giving a shiur on Taisus, as Mefarshim explained, because when you learn Torah, what does it do to the person? It forces my brain to create a divinely inspired neural network. As the pasuk we say in davening and the pasuk Tilim, Torah Hashem Temima, what does the complete Torah do? It's Meshivas Nafesh, it brings the soul back into the person's body. Eitus Hashem Nemana, the testimony of God is trustworthy. It's Machkimas Pesi, makes the foolish smart. It changes your brain. You know, it's interesting because I was involved for many years in Kiryv Rechaikim, and then involved in Kiryv Kravim, and I generally get the more difficult questions from Kiryv Kravim than that of Rechaikim. And one of the top ones is a question I get that, what's the point to obsession almost of learning Gemara? Come on, why are we learning about Shersha Naga Chesapara, about an ox goring, about something of Ben Sarah that never happened, never will happen? Why are we doing that? Why are we engaged in Tikkun Olam? Why are we doing things that will change the world? Why are we so busy learning Gemara? What's critical is that where do you get your opinions from? Why do you have the opinions that you have? Where do you get them from? So we know that what develops a person's personality is what's called nature via nurture. You're exposed to a culture, and that mixture creates the opinions that you have. Our opinions are from the omniscient creator of the world. We don't just think of things. The reason why we go to Gedolim to ask our questions is because their brain is saturated with divine wisdom. And that's why the Torah is called the mikvah. It's the mikvah of the brain. It purifies it. And that's why the word mikvah is the same as tikvah. It's our only hope. Our only hope is to be able to be like God and to put godliness in the world is only if we go ahead and we learn His Torah, His knowledge, which is shared to us through our neshama in our brain. As the Baal HaTanya says in what's called the Kuntres Achron, and in the Sefer Tanya, in the last pamphlet, he says the words that Talmud Torah b'fnimis, the learning of Torah on the inside, the Hainu, what is that? Hamshachas hamoichin. It's bringing down the intellect from the brain down into the body. That's what Torah is. It's planting a seed. It's changing who you are. That is what learning Torah is. It's the master key to becoming you. Nefesh HaChaim says in Shar Dalit, he says, in contrast to all other mitzvahs, every mitzvah corresponds to a limit of the body. And that says, Reb Chaim Volozhin, he says, but Torah is the master key to being you. It's like, you know, I was once driving with a chavrusa of mine in Lakewood, and we saw there was a young teen who was skipping in the street. And I said, look, that person is alive. What Torah does to us, it makes us alive. It connects us. We're totally being, because we're totally connected. How does it do that? So Maral says What it does is mechaber helikiyusa shel neshmasa. It connects the godliness of his soul with the physicality of his body and his world. Like the Chavis Abba says in Shahar Precious in the second parak, it says, Kavanas Torah. The intent of the Torah, what is the objective of all this learning Torah? It's lahamshul haseichel, it's to dominate the intellect, b'chol taivas hanefesh, and all the desires of the lower part of the person, that's the nefesh, in contrast to the neshama, v'tanuges haguf, and the pleasures, the delights of the body, ulahagbire alein, and to have it dominate them, is to have the intellect dominate the body. It says because you do it, says the Chavis above us, because it's well known. When the desires, when the instincts, when they overpower the intellect, it's the head of all sin, and it's the beginning of all disgrace. What happens is, and that's where addictions come from. What the idea is that a person is not letting his higher part, the upper story, go in and influence and plant the seed in the lower one. It's when his lower part is dominating what's above. So essentially, what the Torah is like what Maral calls bein adam la'atzmai. Yes, avodah is a relation between the person and God, and gemilas chasad is a relation with a person and others. But first, you need to have a relationship with your own self, as we're going to explore later on. That there's many parts of ourselves, and the objective if that is to connect all those parts together to be yourself. It's a very interesting Gemara in Shabbos Daf Kaf Hema Beis that says, and we're nearing to the end over here, and then we'll take some questions. It's a lot to discuss in case you're following all that, or this might be too heavy. The Gemara says, there's a pasuk we say in Tehillim that says, L'yeh b'cha el zar. We say it on the fourth day of the Shir Shal Yom. There shouldn't be in you a foreign god. So the Gemara in Shabbos asks, Izehu el zar shish b'gufa shel adam. I don't understand. It shouldn't be in you a foreign god. We do have a foreign god in the body, and it's actually important. Actually, that word begufa, we're going to future classes dwell on a lot of these different words and the nuances. But what's the foreign god in the body of a person? How do you have a foreign god inside of you? B'cha elzar, in you there's a foreign god. In me, says the Gemara, ze yetzer hara. That's the evil inclination, and that's really the challenge that a person has about who is the you, who's dominating, and that's what Chazal tell us that. You have inside of yourself a foreign god. And the antidote, what stops you from being disconnected, is the Torah. Like the Alei Shur, like Rav Volbe says, he says, what does it mean El Zar? What does it mean a foreign god? So he says something so beautiful. He says, a foreign god doesn't just mean that there's you and there's a foreign god. He says, Zehu koyach shel zaris ba'adam. It's a force of alienation in the person. What that means to say, if this power, it dominates on the person, a person becomes foreign to themselves, literally foreign, without emotion, without understanding, without connection, without love. A person doesn't love themselves, a person doesn't understand themselves, a person is not connected to themselves. That is the Yetzer Hara. It's a battle of self-identity. Who am I? What am I? The Yetzer Hara disconnects the head from the body. It makes it disconnected. It's two different parts. The Yetzer Hara is the alienation from the self. It's just body without head. The Torah is the tavon, is the antidote, because Torah connects the two parts. Torah brings you into yourself. It takes your brain and it has it dominate onto the body and influence the body and connect with the body and make it one holistic unit. What's called bein adam la'atzma. Yes, so the first pillar of the world, of your world, stands on is a relationship with yourself. Before having a relationship with God, before having a relationship with other people, it's integral to have a relationship with yourself, and therefore, the Mishnah tells us first Torah, and only then avodah and gemilas chasad. Like the statement of Yerucham Lavav, it's the Mir Mashgiach. He says, "Ha'adam hu Torah, v'Torah hi adam." It's the same thing. Why? Because the person is only complete with Torah. Without that, you're disconnected. Yes, you might, even if you're a thinking person without Torah, but that's not the full person. As we'll talk about in later classes, a person has neshama too. The neshama has no way, but if it's with the Torah, and then that will only be connected with the body if it's with the Torah, taking it, planting the seed in the person's body. And this is what Maral says in the Siva Havis Reya. Said the Zav is a tachlis HaTorah. So you know what the purpose of the Torah is? That a person should acquire this elevated state. What does it mean being in the divine image? The person being complete? He says, Kikala Torah Kula Perish. He says, you know what the whole time Torah is a commentary? It's all a commentary of one thing. How are you going to reach this status, this state of being the Tel Malakim? And so the Kacha Mitzvah Says, therefore, you know why there's a certain amount of positive commandments in the Torah? Heim Ramach, they're 248. Why 248 mitzvahs? Kiminyan Eivari Ha'adam, like the amount of limbs in a person's body. The Eivari Ha'adam Heim Talmud, a person's figure, their form are the limbs. And the Chalak Torah, who appears there, the whole Torah is an explanation of this idea. How is a person going to come to this level? The Tzelem Malakim, to be the ultimate you, is all in the words of learning Torah. Torah is machkimes pesi. It's meshivas nafesh. It brings the soul inside your body, and that's why the Torah was given, and that's why Gedolim, what makes them great, is that every single thing, every single emotion, like there's an interesting Yalkut that says every single emotion, there's a Torah how to feel and what to do. It's to change our physical nature to match our souls, and we'll talk about in later classes about the antonyms, the exact opposite of what Torah is. What Torah actually is like Rav Hirsch says in a democracy, the people make the law. In Judaism, the law makes the people. The Torah is what makes us us. That's what the Torah is. And therefore the Maral says, Lafikach shleimus ha'adam atzmai, the completion of the person himself, until he's considered the complete creature that has in him the good, who b'shvil ha'Torah. It's because of the Torah. So when we're coming to the Yontiv of Shavuos, and your fathers and your husbands and your sons and your brothers are going to be learning the words of Torah, what they're going to be doing is to be starting a relationship with themselves. So therefore we explain that Pesach to Shavuos, where we are right now, what is Pesach? What is freedom? What is the Lechem Aini? Is like the poor man who's totally independent because he has nothing else. He's not dependent on him or her or that or this or money because he doesn't have anything. He only has himself. That is Geula. That's redemption. Then once you were yourself, then you could start having a relationship with yourself. Torah is connecting with yourself. And only then, when you have a relationship with yourself, and this will obviously can develop in later groups and later classes, is then you can have a relationship with God. And then you can have a relationship with other people. Before that, you cannot have any relationship with anyone else. That's just my sign that that's the end of my slides. That is the objective of, so again, two mind-blowing ideas about the Yom Tov of Pesach and of Shavuos. Pesach is, what is the freedom? The freedom is to be able to be you. That's what freedom is. And you're not being anyone or anything else. You're not dependent on anyone and anything else. That's what Pesach is. That's what the Lechem Aini is. And that's the Midah Vanava. And what is the Yom Tov of Shavuos? What is Kabbalah Sater? What is the objective? Is to connect with yourself, to have a relationship with yourself. And the only way that you could fully do that is with saturating your brain with divine wisdom. Actually, this is not the final version of the slides. I actually had a quote that I was saying would be a quotable quote for this class. It goes like this: saturate your brain with divine wisdom to impregnate your body as a province of the supernal kingdom. So again, that's just a quote that I thought would really translate what Shavuos is all about. What we're going to do: saturate your brain with divine wisdom to impregnate your body as a province of the supernal kingdom. That's what Torah is. That's a whole Torah is from the word of pregnancy. What shaykhs? Now you have a new understanding. What you're learning Torah all the time. Your husbands, everyone learning Torah. What are we doing? We're creating a living spirit inside of ourselves. We're bringing down the upper story into the lower story. That is the objective of Torah. That's the beginning of becoming the self. It's through the Torah, the antidote of the Yetzer Hara. The El Zar B'Gufa Shaladim is when we become alienated from ourselves. That is the objective of Torah. So again, if anyone has any questions, there's a lot. I threw out a lot over here. I don't know if I did, TMI, but I just was going to share some of those ideas. So Chanamindi, I guess you could open it up if anyone has any questions. Feel free.
I think if anyone has a question, they could raise their hand or write something in the chat, and I'll unmute you.
Oh, or yeah, or we could unmute. Or yeah, unmuting probably would be too noisy. How about you, Chaim? Do you have any questions?
Actually, I do. When you say Torah, right? Like Torah what? And especially for women, like what are you saying? Learn Torah. It's
Exactly.
connecting.
It's actually one of the later classes. I gave this to the girls in high school also. There's there's something the equivalent what Torah, the women have learning Torah too. Women make Birchas Torah. Women have learning Torah too. They have different categories of learning Torah, but they also have the mitzvah of learning Torah. Now they have a different relationship exactly than men do. However, that's part of the Jewish people is the learning of Torah's primary order. The world stands at Torah. The Gemara discusses what's their relationship with Torah. But actually, women do have something that's different than that, which the equivalent, well known from, I believe it's from the Vilna Gaon, that he says the equivalent of Torah is tznius. And we will discuss that in some class. Why? How is that the equivalent? And how does that relate to what Torah does for men, does tznius do for women? But be that as it may, women learn Torah too. There's many learned women that are allowed to and encouraged if they are able to integrate the learning of Torah. But no matter what Torah you're doing, no matter if you're a woman, you're learning halacha lamait, whatever you're learning, it's saturating your brain and it's creating the person that you are. Just women don't need it as much as men. So they already have that, so to speak, that bini yisera. They already have that Torah, but it's still the same neshama from the Torah. They're just it's more intuition than teaching, than learning the actual text themselves.
So one second. Wait. Hang on a second. So I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, no, you said about learning Gemara, learning this, learning that. Okay, so how is that connecting anything?
So that's what I'm saying. So what learning Torah is, and this is what, like I said, I answer people that say, why do I learn the Gemara? And why do I learn Torah? Sometimes I'd rather be learning something else. It's very hard for me. I'm giving a shir in it. I gave it right before Myron. I just came to do this class afterwards. It's very hard for me. Why am I doing it? Because what it does is when you have an experience, let's say after this class, someone says something or someone does something or whatever, this and that. What's going to be your reaction? I once gave a parenting class, and I showed people how a father could come home after a long day of work or of learning in kollel or whatever it is, and he'll have 5 different reactions. Doing the same thing. Kids are doing the same thing. They're fighting, this and that. He'll have 5 different reactions. I'm not going to get into that example, but where do you get your opinions and your experiences from? It's all from your neural network in your brain. Your brain is wired to think in a certain pattern, in a certain understanding. And Torah creates divine neural pathways of divine wisdom. When I'm learning a Tosfos, I have to flex my brain to be exactly how the Torah's logic is. And that logic is how I perceive everything in my life. So if I have an interaction with my wife or my daughter or my son or my neighbor or my client or whatever, it's all going to be within that framework. And Torah does that to me. It saturates my brain and it creates those pathways.
I hear you, but I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, that's good. I'll get to that feeling part. I know that I get a lot. I forewarned that on the first class that we can know things and not feel it. And that's all about what we're going to be discussing, about how to feel things. But that's the intellectual answer.
Okay. If anybody has questions if they're on the phone, you could do *6 to unmute yourself. And Zahava has a question. I'm going to unmute her. Hang on a second. Okay, Zahava, you're unmuted.
Okay, so my question is, when you say your relationship with yourself before relationship with Hashem, before the relationship with the Torah, how does that look like in reality? Do I stop keeping Shabbos till I have a relationship with myself? Do I stop praying? Obviously, I know the answer is not, but can you make the blurred lines a little clearer for me?
Yes, that's a great question. Yeah. So obviously, we always know that everything has everything inside of it. Like even now, Sfira Sa'imer, a lot of people in Sfira Sa'imer, they say the 7 types of the Sfiras, which is Chesed, Gvur, Tveres, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, Malchus, times 7, meaning every 7 has 7 inside of it. Like tonight in Sfira Sa'imer, I said Netzach Sheba Malchus, which in Malchus, there's Netzach, and everything has everything in it. And the truth is, yes, when I'm connecting with Hashem and with others, I'm also working on myself, and with myself, with others, it always has peace in that. And yes, as Jewish people, we have to do everything. We have to juggle everything. So although, let's say, I'm going to tell you the main thing is learning, still have to get a parnasa, still have to deal with the kids. I can't just be in my head all the times, because if my kids need something, I have to be there. When I'm supposed to be learning Torah, yeah, but I need to do that too. So when a person turns 13 or 12, they have to be doing the relationship with others and with Hashem. However, and I'll probably develop this in a later class, developmentally, which I'm very into the developmental model, developmentally, first comes the relationship with the self, then with God or with others, and then with God. There's different ways of looking at it. But it's first with yourself, then with Hashem, and then with others, and that's the order. But it's more like it's not like a linear, but more like in a circular type of a relationship. So you're gonna have all the relationships, but really the primary focus, what you have, if it was linear, it would be yourself first. But you still have to do the things with Hashem. But even when you're doing with Hashem, actually in the beginning, it's really more yourself and then Hashem. Which, if you could understand what that means to say, sometimes you can do chesed, and it's from the self or for the other person. Before altruism is going to come yourself. So again, that's more the intellectual explanation. We'll develop it further, but great question.
So Rabbi Shlomie, I could kind of like sum it up for everyone here. The Torah says "Naaseh v'nishma," right? We cannot wait until we understand something in order for us to do something, right? Children, they go to school. They don't know why they're going to school, but we have to make sure they go and get an education. When they get older, then they understand, and they kind of get to the essence of why I've been doing it all this time. So, the relationship that you'll have with yourself, we actually have it when we're younger, I believe. I think we lose it as we get older from outside sources and stuff like that. So, that's just my thought on it. That's my take.
Definitely a large extent, we're going to see it. I think I mentioned last class also, we're going to learn a lot from children. The children tend to have the relationship with themselves. And as we get older, we get intimidated, we get bullied, and we lose that connection with ourselves. And that gets tethered. And that's what we have to reclaim.
But Rabbi, sometimes, right, if you think about it, sometimes having a relationship too much with yourself is also not good, right? It's like putting too much salt in the soup until you can no longer eat it, right? So, and you can see it if you go on a subway, you can see people speaking to themselves. They're actually they're talking to themselves. They're having pure relationships with themselves.
So it's that's going to be one of the things that we're going to have to deal with. Where one of the myths is that being self is selfish, and that it's a negative thing, and we're gonna show how there's a secular understanding of self and there's the Jewish understanding of self. And the Jewish understanding of self, you could go and maximize that, because it's really all about yourself. And the more you do that, the more it's going to be your connection with God and with others. So it's going to be counterintuitive how the secular understanding is of what the self is.
So, sorry, can I say one last comment, or you want me to? Am I on a roll here? So I was thinking about it right now as we were speaking. So I was thinking about Shema Israel, how it says Israel is one self, right? With Hashem and with each other. We're one. We're not, we're all connected in some way or another. It's not for nothing we need to have a minion, right? Think of ourselves as like cells, like a cell in a body. You have one cell. It's nice. It has all the DNA. We have all the Torah inside of us, right? Then we have multiple cells. We create tissues. Multiple tissues create an organ. Multiple organs create systems. And then what you do is you actually have the whole human being. But we have everything starting from that one cell, which is each and every one of us. Each and every one of us are important, but we have to be together and know how to work together to make this whole thing work. But the self, I think it extends not just, you can't be a cell that's a kamikaze cell, right? That just kills themselves. We need you to live and thrive so that we can go ahead and create the systems. Now, every cell has a different function. One will actually create, will be part of the lung. One will be part of the heart. Everyone's somewhere else. But you'll see, you have a lot of conflict with the other cells because every organ is fighting for the blood, right? Everyone is fighting for the blood. But one organ can't hog all the blood. If he does, we die. Everyone dies. So
exactly, that's a great point. You're really touching on something we're going to talk about in a later class about how the Jewish people are all one organism, and all the different organs. The bigger you are, and the more critical you are, the more you're actually more into all the other cells, and you're actually more like the heart, which is actually its whole purpose is for others. So we're going to get to that.
What I'm trying to ask, Rabbi Shlomie, is can you sign my mortgage for me? I'm just kidding. Can we share bank accounts? I'm kidding.
All right, Mindy, anyone else or anything else?
I don't see any other questions. Does anyone have any other questions?
Someone put something on the chat, but I don't see it. Oh, here it is. Oh, no, someone wrote something regarding the Chevis Halvavis. that he's not speaking of the purpose of learning Torah, rather the intention of the Torah is to bring the precious mind over body. Yeah, 100%. What the objective is of the way you get that, the way you get to have your brain, the way you have over body is through the mind, and the way you get the mind is through the Torah. So definitely it's a mixture of that. And precious we'll discuss at a future class also regarding precious, but that's not the objective. The objective is to actually connect the mind and the body. Okay.
Oh, wait, Shlomie, hold on. Someone's asking, can you give a life example of being more real coming to Yontif of Shavuos as women? No. I'm not sure what the question is really.
Yeah, I get the question. The person's asking something that we're going to have to take many classes to develop. But let's try to see if we can give an example. The person's asking, we're saying that the whole purpose of Shavuos, the whole purpose of the Torah, is to connect your brain with the bodies to become who you are. So how would a woman, who we're even saying that we're going to have to develop in later classes regarding exactly their role as it applies to Torah and how to become themselves, how could they be more themselves on the Yom Tov of Shavuos? So the truth is that it's part of the sneak peek from a later class, is that the objective is to not try to escape from who you are and what is going on in your life. You want to live your life in this present moment. One of the great Gemaras, classic, I'll probably have it on a later class. It would have been appropriate for Shavuos, is one of the great the Talmudic sages said, if not for this day of Shavuos, of Kabbalah Torah, I would be just like everybody else. But the wording he says, I would be another, what's his name again? Isi, I'm forgetting what his name was. He said, I would be like all the other ones out there on the street. Or Yosi, Kama Yosi Ikebeshukah. Many Yosis in the marketplace. And one of the interpretations of the Gemara is that some people there are many Yosis, meaning he's not just one Yosi. At work, he's Joe. At home, he's Yossi. In the shul, he's Yosef. Everywhere, he's Kama Yosi Ike B'Shukah. What the Torah does is like we said, it's authenticity. It's just being you. It's connecting your higher self with your lower self. Don't let your impulses, like the Chovos says, overpower your brain. Take a deep breath and ask yourself the following question. What is it that Hashem wants from me right now? Now, although that sounds like a relation with Hashem, I'm bringing him in because we'll see he does connect to us from ourselves. But if you want to be more yourself with Yom Tov, I don't know if it's a Corona-related Yom Tov, as many people are going to have. If you want to have a beautiful Yom Tov on Shavuos, you really want to connect with the Torah. You don't want to be Kama Yesi B'Shukah. You want to be horror pregnant with a living spirit inside of yourself. What you do is you allow your brain to connect with your neshama. For men, it needs Torah. For women, it's more about their intuition. Connect with your neshama and say to your neshama, what is it that Hashem, what is it, neshama, that you think we should be doing right now? That is a way to come to Yom Tov Shavuos being yourself. I know that's not sufficient.
But can you give a specific example instead of general?
Oh, an example of a story?
No, it's like give a specific example that somebody could apply it to themselves instead of a general.
Sorry.
When you say an example, you mean something that would happen in
I don't know. Hashem wants me to sit with my children and read them stories. And I don't know, instead of schmoozing with my neighbor about this and that. I don't know, some kind of example.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. So you prepared a special Yom Tov meal for Shavuos. You went out of your way to make a special dairy meal. And everyone was discussing which you have the milk meal at the night, the day, whatever. Okay, the men decided we'll give it up to the men. Men decided they're going to do it by the day meal. Fine. So you go out of your way, you create this whole thing, you check up on different recipes, and you really went out of your way. You went to the store special, you got special ingredients, you went above and beyond. Come to the day meal, everyone's all verschlepped. They do come, they don't come, they come, they have to sleep, they say, you know what, I don't know, my stomach's hurting, I was up all night, I'm not really interested in eating. They don't eat what you prepared. Many women would be livid. They'd be frustrated, very rightfully so. It's very insensitive of the man to just be like that. And they don't even apologize, they don't even appreciate it, they don't say anything, and what they did to go through that. So instinctively, what a person's going to be is going to be very upset, very frustrated, very angry. They might give the cold shoulder to the husband, they might blow up, implode, explode, whatever it's going to be. That's the situation, that's the example. So what would it mean like if you call that, so to speak, the Torah perspective for Yom Tov of Shavuos, what that would mean is that she would go inside and she would ask her neshama or brain, whatever we're going to do, we're going to discuss it on later, but just for now, whatever works for you, and say that, what do you think about what's going on? Because we tend to be externally focused, like we said about the Yom Tov of Pesach. We're dependent on other people, about their reaction, about what they're doing, what they're saying. Forget about connecting with them. Yeah, they're being insensitive. They're not being caring. But connect with yourself first. I like calling it inner dialogue, self-talk, be your own best friend. We'll get to a lot of these terms. It's actually in the 6th parak of Avos, so that was also part of the parak in the parak shir. Nikureya, my interpretation of that mission is that you call your own friend. You're your own friend. Ask yourself, and then take a walk with yourself and talk it over with yourself and say, what should we do? That will be a way of connecting with yourself versus being dependent on others and just being reactive. I don't know if that was a great example, but that was
okay.
definitely.
So what's the answer?
The answer would be to ask yourself, discuss it with yourself. I do it all the time. I ask
Okay, and
myself,
for example, what would be a kind of outcome that would be something, I don't know, connecting with yourself? What should you tell yourself? Your husband doesn't want to eat. What's the connection, mind, and the soul thing?
So the thing would be like something I would tell myself, okay, but I'm a man, would be more like say, okay, look, I made a beautiful meal for others. It's a shame they're not getting it. It doesn't mean anything about me. You know, a lot of times I give a shir and I give to high school girls and I feel, I'm like, are you serious? Like half of them are sleeping, half are talking, half went out. There's 2 that are listening. One is not getting it. The other one, and like, what is this? This is, I have gems to share with the world, and this is what I'm getting. And I have to remind myself, I don't focus externally. I go inside and I ask myself, I go, Shlomie, you got good Torah? I say, yes. So what should we do? Look, you do your part. You share with the world what Hashem gave you. If they're not taking it, okay, it's a shame. If they only knew how delicious this cheesecake was, you know, they would know, because this chef and that writer, they said this is the best of the best, and I made it exactly. And my best friend Shirley, who she knows, she loved it. That's a way of being with yourself on the Yom Tov Shavuos.
I mean, I know it's 10:40, so I whatever, I don't want to necessarily continue it, but in my mind, I'm like, how is that a Torah perspective? A secular person can be telling themselves the same thing.
100%. So that's what I'm saying. We're going to develop this in later classes, that the secular perspective only goes that far. That's going to be one of the questions we're going to delve is what makes Torah so much better than why is this not any different than lets you just connect with your brain? Why would Torah be any more? And what's the difference between Torah and other sciences and other knowledges? It's all the same thing. So why we have it from God. So what's the difference? So people discover it on their own. A lot of science is out there, a lot of psychology. What makes Torah better? That we're going to discuss. You're right. I'm not going to go and now delve into right now. It did allude to it regarding divine wisdom. It's not just what we think. Again, my brain, when I'm thinking, I'm not just coming from books of psychology or from the sciences or from what my mother or father told me, which was beautiful, but it was the Torah that they taught us, whether through action or from the Torah that we learned. That's where I'm coming from when I'm thinking through a problem. It's not just from ideas. It's coming from the Jewish soul. That's the Torah that's connecting to my body. That's where I'm reacting from.
Okay, I'm gonna let you go. I just want to say, someone is asking if you have a handout of the stuff that you discussed tonight.
Yeah, sure. The PowerPoints, we can do that. So I don't know if anyone's still on, but it's for the recording anyway. It's going on Torah anytime. So yeah, email the selfprojectclass@gmail.com. Anything related to this shir, to this class, and also in case, just so that we could contact, just to send out emails so people know when the class are going to be. Mitzvah Hashem, this should be every Sunday at 9:30, but life happens, so that's there, and Mitzvah Hashem will send out hopefully the PowerPoint of this class.
And also, Rabbi Shlomie, just wanted to mention something. When you get into a holiday, you don't have to complicate the knowledge that you're absorbing to do the holiday. Keep it simple. Understand that it is our history. Read the Torah. Understand, like, from a a historical purpose. Wow, Hashem gave us the Torah, right? And understand, feel, and remember it like it really did happen. Our Baruch Hashem, our religion is the only one that actually has the Kfarim of Avraham Avinu, and we have the Kotel. We have things from the Tanakh that actually exist today. We have Yam HaMelech. We have everything. We have the Yam Suf. We actually can see everything that we have. So it's like, and actually when I spoke to people who are not of the Jewish faith, they were like, they never even thought about it. So look, everything's in Israel. We have all these natural miracles that still exist up to this day, and proof that, that God sent, the Gafrita and Sodom and Gomorrah and all that stuff. So keep it simple. You don't have to go too deep. Learning Torah is great. You should learn Torah. I don't think anybody should limit themselves from learning Torah. Learn what you can. If you're able to do it, do it. If you're not able to do it as much, then that's your capacity, right? Everyone has their own capacity. It doesn't mean you're less. By the way, whoever has the heart, David HaMelech was not the smartest person of that time. Achitophel was, right? But Hashem chose him because he had the heart, and he had the ne'emanut, he had the trustworthiness. So Hashem chose him. So that's kind of what we're saying here. I just wanted to kind of provide that insight, Rabbi Shlomie. So
yeah,
thank you.
Very good. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. Have a Chag Kasher v'Sameach.
Thank you.
We'll see you next Sunday.
Mirza Hashem.
9:30. Okay.
All right, guys. Take care.
Good night.